Now, live on KBTX, the Brazos Valley's news leader, this is News 3 at 6.
Good evening, I'm Rebecca Schwartz.
And I'm Tyler Neves. Our top story tonight focuses on recent developments in the Korean Peninsula. Since the Cold War, North Korea has been dominated by the Kim family regime. In December 2011, Kim Jong-un cemented his position as supreme leader after the death of his father, Kim Jong-il. Since then, he has increased the nuclear capacity of his state, threatening the national security of the United States and its allies. Missile and nuclear weapons tests have been conducted at an unprecedented rate since the beginning of 2017, demanding an answer from the United States. We go now to Nick Larzabal to report on the President Welsh's plan to deal with the situation in North Korea. Nick?
Good afternoon, Tyler. President Welsh has stated that the current status quo in North Korea is unacceptable. Currently, the DPRK threatens the security of the United States and its allies in the region, and tensions are rising. In a meeting with the National Security Council, the president emphasized that his administration would seek to accomplish several objectives to address the crisis. President Welsh has tasked his National Security Council to formulate policy options that improve the status quo, keep North Korea from getting nuclear weapons, and rule out armed conflict with China or a loss of faith from Japan and South Korea. Although President Welsh has yet to receive policy recommendations from his National Security Council, he made it clear that he wants concrete objectives that address the situation without jeopardizing our relations with critical actors in the region. Back to you, Tyler.
Thank you, Nick. President Welsh is seeking the support of various agencies to help create an effective solution in North Korea.
The Central Intelligence Agency, State Department, Defense Department, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Treasury Department outlined their policy proposals at both the House Committee on Foreign Affairs hearing and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing.
We go now to congressional correspondent Devin Malone to hear more about the hearings.
Thank you, Tyler. During the hearings, every agency presented different policy options and responded to questions from committee members. Based on their testimonies, it seemed that the members of Congress favored two possible options coming from the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Treasury Department. The Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed a three-pronged plan aimed at deterring North Korea's nuclear capabilities and increasing participation in joint military exercises in the region. However, the committee members expressed concern over their $100 billion budget proposal. The second favored option came from the Treasury Department. In the past, sanctions on North Korea have not been fully effective due to China's lack of compliance. To overcome this obstacle, the department representative outlined a unique policy that called for incentivizing China to fully implement sanctions on the DPRK. It will be interesting to see in the coming days if the Welsh administration favors similar policy options. That's all for now. Back to you, Tyler.
The nuclear situation in the DPRK has recently become an elevated concern. Despite efforts by the United States to slow the development of their nuclear program, North Korea has conducted several nuclear tests since 2006, with the sixth test conducted on September 3rd of this year. The intelligence community estimates that the rogue regime currently has 10 to 25 nuclear warheads, but delivery systems remained limited until November 13th, when they successfully tested an ICBM missile with enough range to hit the United States territory of Guam. To tell us more about this critical issue and what viable options the United States has to address it, we reached out to international security expert Dr. John Schuessler.
So I think the key decision to make, or the first one, is can you aim reasonably for denuclearization or not? I would argue personally we're probably past that point. And now you have to ask yourself, okay, if not denuclearization, what can we ask of the North Koreans in terms of, first, how many weapons they have with what capability, and second, what they can and cannot do with them. So then the key is to kind of communicate to the regime, to the North Korean regime, that we might not be able to force you to give up your nuclear weapons or this missile capability, but you will face certain retaliation if you use it offensively.
U.S. allies in the region also have a major stake in the outcome of this conflict. South Korea desires a diplomatic solution that will ensure the safety of its citizens while reducing the nuclear threat from its northern neighbor. However, the capture of the South Korean military vessel, the Yoon Yong-ha, from international waters by North Korea threatened to destabilize the diplomatic process. Following an ultimatum, the DPRK returned both the military personnel and the ship in order to revive the Freeze for Freeze agreement, which involves the halting of the North Korean nuclear program in exchange for the cessation of U.S.-South Korea joint military exercises. Earlier this week, we sat down with South Korean Representative Travis Yong-ha to find out how they felt about the negotiations.
So, considering the negotiations that we've had with North Korea, considering their blatant taking of the South Korean vessel and its crew, we're very excited that the diplomatic negotiations between us actually went through without military aggression having to spur us to get our vessel back with the crew. So, looking forward, we're trying to pursue all options available diplomatically, as I think can be seen in our handling of the situation with North Korea, taking our vessel and as well the crew, but then returning it through diplomatic negotiations. We're looking to work cooperatively with the United States to do exercises if need be, and potentially talk about force structure in South Korea if the negotiations do fall through.
In order to effectively address a nuclear North Korea, the United States must maintain close partnerships with our allies in the region, as well as key actors such as China. This is critical to any action being proposed by the NSC. China is playing a significant role by promoting multilateral negotiations with Japan, the United States, and both North and South Korea. For more on the Chinese perspective on the crisis with the DPRK, we go live to Beijing with our correspondent, Clayton Yates.
Good morning, everyone. I'm standing in Tiananmen Square, where senior Chinese officials have been working to broker a solution to the North Korean crisis. As you said, China has facilitated multilateral talks between the actors in the region while successfully bringing North Korea to the negotiating table. We know that China is invested in the outcome of the North Korean crisis, and, most importantly, China does not want to see a major conflict erupt on its borders. To this end, China is fully invested in maintaining stability on the Korean Peninsula, even if that requires acceptance of a nuclear North Korea. We will continue to monitor the situation from Beijing.
After deliberating with our allies, China, and the different government agencies, the National Security Council has determined which 3 policy options they will recommend to President Welsh. We go now to our senior national security analyst live at the Pentagon, Bruno de Mesquita.
Good afternoon. Sources inside the NSC indicated that they are seriously considering a synergy between military, diplomatic, and economic options. The State Department developed the Freeze by Freeze plan, which proposes diplomatic negotiations with North Korea, a process that would occur over an undetermined number of years. Treasury's proposal recognizes the ineffectiveness of past sanctions to impede North Korea's nuclear development due to China's lack of compliance. This is overcome by incentivizing China through greater participation and control in international economic institutions. The Defense Department and the Joint Chiefs of Staff jointly proposed amplified deterrence in the region. The means of this option are unknown, but will ultimately coerce North Korea to denuclearize. Status remains secretive, but the plan that they propose seems typical for the organization. The JCS-DOD deterrence option is an aggressive move and runs the risk of provoking an equally aggressive response. Finally, Treasury presents a strong, innovative, and well-developed plan, though it is dependent on China. These issues can be overcome, but a more pressing concern is that some departments suggest secrecy rather than the tested policy-making process with congressional oversight, often relying on sources outside the NSC for vital information. The NSC will have to improve cooperation for an effective solution to the crisis and to assure the American public of a strong and effective government. That's all from the Pentagon. Back to you in the studio.
Breaking news tonight from Japan. We have just received word from an anonymous source that the United States is considering installing terminal high-altitude area defense missiles to increase deterrence against the threat of a nuclear North Korea. This could derail the agreement that the United States signed with North Korea earlier this week.
This would significantly increase Japan's deterrence ability, which could antagonize both China and the DPRK and potentially derail the 5-party negotiation process. Additionally, the delicate power balance in the region will be affected by Japan's military buildup. We will continue to update you as the situation develops.
Given this most recent update, we await to see just how President Welsh implements his plan for North Korea. Stay tuned as we provide up-to-the-minute coverage on the situation in the DPRK.
But before we go, we would like to spotlight a local legend, Charles Herman.
Dr. Herman has served at the Bush School of Government and Public Service for 20 years. From founding director of the school to beloved professor, we here at BNN want to recognize and thank Professor Herman for his service in training future public servants. That is our broadcast for tonight. I'm Tyler Neves.
And I'm Rebecca Schwartz. Good night.
Thank you for watching News 3 at 6 on KBTX. The people you know, the news you trust.